It's so appropriate that my very first color spotlight is on ultramarine blue, which very well may be my favorite color in the whole world. And as I was preparing this video, I realized there are 15 different ways in which I use ultramarine blue in my paintings. Probably more, but that's what I came up with. And I'd love to share those with you if you'll stay tuned. My ultramarine of choice is Liquitex Heavy Body in the red shade, and I love to mix it with the Liquitex Titanium White, also in the heavy body. Number one, anytime you see a mountain range in my paintings, you can bet it's probably ultramarine blue. It's just that perfect purpley blue that gives the illusion that the mountains are pushed back in the distance. It's so simple to take the ultramarine and continue to add a little white. The lighter it gets, it appears that it's further in the distance. It's like magic. Number two, I have two blues that I almost always use for my skies. It's either going to be ultramarine blue or cobalt. Cobalt is a nice clear blue that I love, but if I've included mountains in my painting, I'm definitely going to be using ultramarine for the mountains and the sky. This way, I'm guaranteed great color harmony, works every time. Number three, speaking of great color harmony, when I'm using ultramarine blue for the sky, I will frequently use ultramarine blue for the shadow color within the clouds, using ultramarine blue and varying degrees of white. Sometimes I'll make it a little grayer, a little bluer, a little stormier, but I'm using that ultramarine blue as a base. Number four, one of my most favorite things to paint are hydrangea flowers. And typically, when you see hydrangea that I've done, they are in ultramarine blue. I just think it's the perfect color choice. You can add a little more white to do the highlights, a little deeper to get the shadows. It's just perfect every time. And I also love to use ultramarine in my little garden scenes when I'm putting in little blue flowers, and in larger paintings where I have blue flowers. Ultramarine is just a perfect choice. Number five, since I always have ultramarine on my palette, when I need a purple, I'll usually just take a touch of alizarin crimson or another red on my palette with a little white and mix with that ultramarine, and gosh, you can get some of the most beautiful purples with that. I usually don't even put a separate purple on my palette because ultramarine just makes a beautiful lavender to purple. Number six, speaking of mixing colors, the gray that I always use on my palette is a mixture of ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and white. Here's an example of a painting that I did using those two in combination. Everything metallic in the watering can, the background, the dark and the light background. And you'll notice I also had some ultramarine blue flowers in this painting. So I almost used ultramarine like a mother color. There it is in the utensils and even in the shadow on the table. So that ultramarine was in mixed throughout that painting, and it just brought about beautiful color harmony. I love using it to mix grays. You can make them warm or cool, just perfect every time. Number seven, I love keeping my paintings fresh and full of color. So sometimes I'll use ultramarine blue as a way of getting in a dramatic background without using black or brown. In this next painting, you'll see that I've used ultramarine as the flowers, but I also mixed it with a lot of white and got in a very soft, beautiful background. Contrast with this painting where I used ultramarine straight out of the tube, super dark. It gave a beautiful navy appearance. Number eight, I'm not sure why I find it so amusing, but ultramarine blue is the exact color of blueberries. I love painting blueberries. They are super simple. You do a circle, put a little dollop of pure ultramarine on top, use the pure ultramarine as the shadow, put a touch of white in it for the body and a little more white for the highlight, and bada boom, bada bing. You've got some adorable little blueberries that will add a great deal of whimsy to your painting. Here's the finished painting with those scattered blueberries that had rolled out of control. Super simple, and just love that color. Coming in at number nine, I'd love to show you from that same blueberry painting, the tablecloth. Ultramarine blue is a beautiful, believable blue for check tablecloths. It's a beautiful edging on tablecloths. Here's a close-up of another one that I did with the little dots and squiggles, and it was just so easy to work with and looks so believable. Coming in at number 10, I've mentioned that I really like to try to keep my paintings very colorful. And one way that I accomplish that is I will often use ultramarine blue for shadows on tabletops. Rather than using something that's more grayed down, I will use ultramarine blue and white as the shadows. I love it under this bench. Even the little bird has a shadow. Look under this plate how intense that ultramarine blue shadow, that's just pure ultramarine closest to the plate. Beautiful color. Look at the shadow of this watering can, how much more beautiful it is because it's blue rather than gray. And the same thing with this vase. I love using blue as a shadow. Do it all the time. Highly recommend it. Number 11, I love blue and white pottery, and I have a lot of pieces in my home, so I often incorporate them into still lifes in my paintings. I love ultramarine blue and white for that. If I'm doing something whimsical or something serious, works every time. Number 12. In an attempt to keep my paintings colorful, one of the tricks is I will use ultramarine blue when I need to darken a shadow area. Rather than using black, which can be tempting, I find that using ultramarine keeps it more lively. For example, when I use sap green in a dark area of the painting, if it's not dark enough, I add ultramarine and get that super dark, rich green. Number 13, I love using ultramarine blue when I'm doing ocean scenes. I love to use a green for the forward waves and use ultramarine blue for the sea behind it. I've used it in combination with green in a number of beach kind of paintings, and I just love the results. I love the ultramarine at the base of that wave, and I've even used it in more lakes and still water. And I think, again, ultramarine is just a great choice for water. Number 14, another way that I like to keep my paintings colorful is to use ultramarine as a shadow on white objects. Instead of using gray, I particularly use ultramarine blue as the shadow on white flowers. Just love it. And now, number 15. This is one of those paintings that I reworked quite a few times, and when I started out the road was gray, and because the road is such a predominant feature in this painting and because I like colorful paintings, it just felt too heavy, it felt too drab for me. So I ended up reworking it and I did the road in ultramarine blue, and I ended up changing the sky color so that also was ultramarine, and I think it gave great color harmony, but I think it also made this painting more whimsical, more interesting, livelier in color, and yet one more way to use the beloved ultramarine blue. Hey, if this video has been helpful, I sure would appreciate a thumbs up, and if you'll hit subscribe, you'll be sure not to miss the next free video that's coming out soon. Thanks a lot for watching. God bless.